My name is Raeanna May Woody. I'm 59 years old. I was born into an addicted family. Both my parents were alcoholics. My mother was also a drug addict. I was raising my sisters from the time I was 7. I was the oldest of 4. When I was 3, I was fully raped by a family friend. So badly that there was extensive damage. But then I was molested again at 7 by my uncle. And then again at 14 by another uncle. I married really young, 16, matter of fact, to get out of the house because of things that were going on. I had 2 children, Tina and Carlos. They were adopted by their grandparents. I lived in Cheyenne then, Wyoming. I left there. I had 3 more children. For years, I was June Cleaver. I didn't do anything. I was married to an alcoholic. He wasn't abusive verbally. We were married and then divorced and then married again. We divorced again. And I moved to Des Moines, Iowa, where my mother was living and some family. My mom, when I was 12, she got me drunk for the first time and smoked marijuana with me for the first time. But then I didn't like either one, so I didn't do any. But then when I got to Iowa in 94, she in turn got me high on meth, and all it took was one time, and I was addicted. I ended up with a guy that was dealing meth and got in trouble a couple times with probation. Finally, I ended up with a friend. We ended up together, married while he was in jail. I was selling just a little bit of meth in order to keep myself high. I was never doing anything huge. He was in cahoots with the big drug dealer guy, and they didn't trust this girl to go do this deal on her own because it was in a different town. So I drove her what turned out to be her buy-bust. I was on state probation, so she got out that same night. They kept me. 93 days later, it went federal, and that was July 25th of 06. I remained in jail until I was released from federal prison in 17.
Raeanna's story has a very unique quality to it, which is typically the prosecutors use their charging power, their sentencing power to bludgeon the individual defendant to take a guilty plea, but also to bludgeon other defendants and sort of send a signal to the whole community, like, this is the price you're going to pay if you don't go along with us. But there was something particularly insidious about what was going on in Raeanna's case, because they used their sentencing power in this case to bludgeon a sentencing judge.
When prospective jurors appear in my court, I like to tell them that there's only 2 ways anybody can be convicted. One is that a person voluntarily and knowingly pleads guilty, knowing the maximum punishments, knowing the fact that they are waiving or giving up important trial rights, and providing the judge with a factual basis for the plea. In other words, we only want people to plead guilty in our system who are in fact guilty. If one is not guilty, one should never plead guilty regardless of how much pressure is applied. The other way is that a jury of 12 people, after hearing all of the evidence, determines guilt. Well, here, what had happened was Raeanna's free will, if you will, to proceed to trial was really taken away because she had 2 choices. She could go to trial, exercise her right to trial, and she could receive a life sentence, or she could plead guilty and get 262 months in prison. There really was no choice. So the idea of free will wasn't involved in whether or not to plead guilty, because any sensible person with competent legal advice would say, well, you have no choice here because she was guilty and she acknowledged that. And the only way to mitigate other than a life sentence was to take the 262 months, even though it was too much and it was harsh, because the prosecutor possessed this power under our rules and exercised this power. Here, there was no choice but to have her plead guilty, and she did. But I was, quote unquote, boxed in by the rule 11C1C.
Raeanna had no choice but to take that because they were threatening her with life. And her judge had no choice but to accept that guilty plea, very reluctantly, because he wasn't going to force Raeanna to do a life sentence. And because of that, she did 11 years behind bars in a case that, frankly, like any other judge would have given her a couple of years. Her own judge would have given her a couple of years. It was this extraordinarily draconian use of prosecutorial power, not because of the individual circumstances or requirements of this case, but solely to send a message of muscle to that judge. It's absolutely one of the most shocking stories of our criminal justice system.
As a Native American woman going into the system, I found that it was harder. I just feel like that Black women, Native American women, Hispanic women are categorized. They are treated as if they're cattle instead of women. I got a 262-month plea that was end of the line. That's the lowest they would go. The day that I was sentenced to that amount of time, I told myself that I wasn't going to allow the time to do me. I was going to do everything in my power to better myself. I was going to make the best of every single day. And I did that. During incarceration, I took every class that I could possibly take. I taught classes. I mentored the mentally disabled women. I was the lead person on that unit. I was a suicide companion. I did everything I possibly could just to better me as a woman. It gets me weepy. We went into the conference room and she says, have a seat. And there's another counselor there. And she said, just a minute. And she walks over to the alcove and picks up a phone and she says, here, this is for you. And it was Jane Ann. And she said, Raeanna. And I said, yes. And she said, here, somebody wants to talk to you. All I remember is him saying, Raeanna, Raeanna. He said, the president's going to make an announcement in 14 minutes. He said, he's announcing some more clemencies and you're one of them. It took my breath away. And I just wanted to hit my knees and thank God, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I was just in shock. But it was a moment that I'll never, ever forget. When Jane Ann and her team started the clemencies, she said, realistically, because I asked her realistically, how many people had a chance of actually getting it? And she said, out of the group of us, that there would probably be 2. And if I've got it correct, out of the number of women that she saw that day, all but 1 got it because of the work that her and her team put in at their own cost. And I just can only say that I hope there are other attorneys that will take into consideration what they did and the lives that they changed. I never would have had a relationship with my daughter had I not got this clemency. So for myself, the gratefulness that I have for what they did is overwhelming.